Hello everyone, I'm Rebecca and welcome back to my channel. At the end of every year, I like to do a little bit of a costuming year in review where I kind of go over all of the costumes or other things that I've sewed in the year and share my thoughts on like how they turned out, how I'm feeling about them, etc. to be able to in future years look back at these videos and see, oh, okay, well in 2022 I did this, in 2025 I did this, etc. to kind of help me remember what I made when. So this video is honestly as much for me as it might be for you. I hope that you enjoy it regardless. Like I hope that you also enjoy looking back at the past year, and maybe this will inspire you to go through and think about what all you might have accomplished this year. And of course, accomplishments do not have to mean sewing or finishing anything in particular. Every person has their own version of what accomplishments are. For some people, it might mean getting out of bed and just like showing up at your job. You know what? That's a lot. Like, good for you, because that's a lot. And for other people, it might mean buying a house or starting a family or like any of those other things. Everyone's versions of accomplishments are different. And for me, it's mostly about sewing and maybe a little bit about theater because let's be honest, that's pretty much all I do. So let's take a look at everything that I made this year, and we'll also talk about like if I actually accomplished some of my goals or not, like some of the sewing plans that I had set out for this year, because let me tell you, I feel like what I wound up with is very different than what I had initially intended. But anyway, we are going to start off 2025 with January sewing. And I started my January off by diving right into a brand new cosplay project, and that was Butterfly Princess Barbie. This was one of those Barbies that like when I was growing up as a little kid, this was probably the pinnacle, the most iconic Barbie that I could think of that I was seeing commercials for, etc. And so to be able to bring this to life and to actually try out like honestly a bunch of new techniques for this project was really very cool. I did fabric painting with markers to get the design on the bodice so that I could get it to be just like the Barbie's bodice, which I thought that that was really, really cool. I do need to fix the fit a little bit on the bodice because somehow it wound up a little bit too large. I don't know what happened there. And of course, when I go to fix the fit, that's going to mean like altering the design just a little bit where the seams are because I did my design after I sewed it all together. But I was really, really pleased with how all of those flowers came out. I also used foam clay for the first time in making my magnetic wand and like sculpting the foam clay. I had never done anything like that before. And honestly, the engineering of the butterflies was something that was so new to me, trying to find something that would be magnetic, that would be able to flutter, that would just have the life of the original Barbie dress. I was honestly really happy with all of the techniques that I learned for this, wiring the sleeves. I mean, there was all sorts of stuff in here, and the styling of this wig was honestly a really big challenge. Getting to have those bangs be exactly right, that was one of the more challenging wigs that I've ever styled. And so while I do think it is not the most flattering costume to wear, I had so much fun wearing it at Emerald City Comic Con last year, especially because I had two other Barbie friends with me, Kirsten Cosplay and Stephanie Canada. That was so much fun to have them both with me doing our vintage 90s Barbies. And I think we just looked so good and also so silly because let's be honest, 90s Barbies are ridiculous and that is what makes them the best. So that was a really, really good way to start out 2025 with just like all of these new techniques that I was learning. And I would love to continue to improve on my techniques and like add more techniques to my tool belt going forward because it's really good to grow as you're making stuff and to learn new things. And so that costume really pushed me in that way, even though it was for a very overall silly cosplay, but I did really enjoy it and I'm hoping that I'll get to wear it again. I decided not to bring it down with me to Anime Los Angeles just because it's rather ungainly. Like there are large metal butterflies on it and big wires in the sleeves, and so packing that in any sort of way, even though I'm driving to Anime Los Angeles, packing that cosplay would be an ordeal, and I don't really want to put myself through that ordeal and try to get that into the car. So I'm bringing Peaches with me, Peaches and Cream Barbie, but I do hope to pull out Butterfly Princess Barbie again for local events. So I finished that project relatively early into February, and the next goal of mine before Comic-Con was to rework my really old Rapunzel cosplay. I find it really important to wear cosplays and costumes multiple times because you put so much work into it. And so especially if you make something that you are then not entirely happy with, it's a good idea to go back and try to make yourself happy with it. Granted, I've got a bunch of cosplays and costumes, actually it's more the historical costumes I've made that I have not revisited. Maybe they left a bad taste in my mouth, etc. But Rapunzel is one that I made this back in 2015, I think it was, and I didn't really like how it fit on me. It always had some fit issues, but the overall cosplay I really loved, and I really love Rapunzel as a character. So to be able to go back and rework the bodice, just make some changes and like fit improvements to the bodice, and also restyle the wig too, to make it just fit better and look better on me, that was a really, really cool thing to do. And I had so much fun wearing Rapunzel at Comic-Con. She's such a loved character, and I mean, I guess that's true of like pretty much any Disney cosplay, but it's really fun to bring out the characters that like little kids passing by are like, oh my gosh, or you know, adults are very enthused about as well. That's what I like about the Barbie and the American Girl cosplays as well. It's like all the millennial women are like, oh my god, I know exactly what you are. So it was nice to improve my Rapunzel in that way, and I look forward to wearing her a lot more now that I like her a lot better. And then right before Comic-Con, I slotted in one more project, and that was my Kirsten winter wear project. So this was a combination of sewing from scratch, upcycling. Actually, technically, I guess it was all upcycling because the fabric for this skirt was from the thrift store. But it was really a combination of like sewing with fabric from the thrift store, upcycling a sweater that I found on eBay, and also I could not have just fully completed this cosplay without the help from one of you, Bonnie, who so absolutely kindly, out of the amazing kindness of her heart, actually made me the mittens and the hat for this project. Like, Bonnie, thank you so, so much, because they were the perfect completion to my Kirsten winterwear project. And I love how it turned out. It's, you know, just another heartwarming American Girl cosplay. That skirt was actually wool, even though I found that at the thrift store, the fabric for it at the thrift store, which was amazing. I have worn that just on its own multiple times now without like any regards to the cosplay, just pulling out the skirt and wearing it. The sweater, with the help of Kierly, because she helped me a little once she arrived here for Comic-Con, I went and I colored in all of the blue parts black because it was a black, white, and blue sweater, but Kirsten's is just black and white. So we used fabric pens to color that in. And overall, she's just super, super cute. I look forward to wearing her at another time when I am not also wearing half of my 6 cosplay underneath, because that would probably be, you know, a slightly better look to not have like the corset and the fishnet tights and stuff like that underneath, but I'm really, really happy with how she turned out. Speaking of 6 though, that is the other thing that I was actually working on at the same time as all of those projects, because I mostly did my Jane Seymour cosplay from 6 last year. I did the majority of it last year. However, I had not yet studied the skirt at the beginning of this year. And so I was doing that just kind of in the background of everything. I would take it to rehearsals, like rehearsals for Xanadu, or like, I think I was even working on it backstage at shows maybe sometimes. And I was just studying like crazy because all of the studs on this costume are hand set onto grosgrain ribbon, which is then hand sewn onto the cosplay. So I had finished all of the studs for the bodice in 2024, but I hadn't sewn any of the studs onto the skirt yet. And I still had a lot of more studs that I needed to set onto those grosgrain ribbons as well. So I was doing that as hand projects, kind of just like wherever I would go that I had to wait someplace, I would be studying and hand sewing the stud strips onto my skirt. I did find out that while I thought that I had completely finished the project before Emerald City Comic Con, it turns out that there were like 4 or 5 strips where I only sewed one side of the stud strip onto the skirt. So at this point I've sewn a few more of those. I think I have 2 or 3 left that still need the other side to be sewn down. I am going to keep sewing those down because I want it to be completely finished. I think when I wore it on Halloween, I ripped a little bit of the netting, so I need to go back and hand sew that netting just to mend it. But at this point, I have worn it. I wore like the original not finished version of it for Halloween last year, 2024. And then I wore it for Emerald City Comic Con on Sunday this year with a whole group of everyone from 6. We all looked so fantastic, and we won Best in Show on the Sunday Cosplay Showcase, which was so exciting. Everyone just did such a great job with their costumes. And then beyond Emerald City Comic Con, I have also worn Jane to go see 6, which was really exciting. Some of us from our group went to go see 6 all together, like the touring musical, and we dressed up, and so I wore the full cosplay, and that was really fun. And then I wore it again for Halloween this year as well, to another Halloween costume party. And this year, if you haven't seen my most recent videos, most of the group at least, are going to be doing Tudor versions, like Tudor silhouettes of those characters as well for this year's Comic-Con. So if you haven't seen the Jane videos that I've already posted for the Tudor Jane, I'll link those down below. By the way, the videos for all of the projects that I'm talking about, they are all linked down below in the description, so that if you missed any or you want to revisit any, you can go check those out really easily down below in the description. But yeah, I did finish, or at least I thought I finished, Jane in time for Comic-Con, and that was just such a thrill to be with those 5 other ladies wearing those costumes for the competition. It was really fun. While Kira was here for Comic-Con, we also did a really quick upcycling project, just like taking really mostly pre-done garments from the thrift store and upcycling those into a Glinda versus Elphaba theme. So here's a picture of us here. That was just like a super quick project. And then once Kira headed off home again, I turned my attention to Victorian festival sewing. And I made like 2.5 new outfits, full gown outfits for the Victorian festival this year, which I'm kind of amazed that I was actually able to accomplish that much, to be honest. I made this yellow ball gown right here, which I am so thrilled with. I am actually about to wear this again to a ball down in the Bay Area when I go to visit my parents. And I have already worn it both for Victorian Festival and also for another historical ball that happened later in the year. It is just fantastic to wear. I feel like an absolute princess, and it's one of my favorite costumes that I have made like recently. Especially, it's my favorite Victorian costume that I've made recently. I'm just really thrilled with it, and I kind of just feel like Belle, I think, in wearing that dress. But that wasn't the only thing that I made for the Victorian Festival, and it wasn't even the only ball gown that I made for the Victorian Festival. The other 1.5 items that I made was a day dress, this one right here. And this fabric I had just picked up in Canada when Kira and I went up there. I got this, I think, in Surrey, and it was the perfect silk. Like, it just instantly inspired me. I love it when something like that happens, when you find a fabric and you're like, oh my God, yes, I know what I am making. I'm so inspired. I'm gonna work on this right away. So that was really exciting because I churned out that day dress like so fast, I feel like. And then of course I also had to make a ball gown bodice to match, because that way I would have an evening wear look for both of the evening events for the Victorian Festival. So that was Emily's ball on Friday, and then the contra dance as part of the Victorian Festival on Saturday. And I'm happy with all of the stuff I made for Victorian Festival. Honestly, I see myself wearing all of that again a lot. Again, I'm already wearing the yellow one like multiple times. I will wear the plaids more as well. They're just so comfortable, so wonderful to wear, so cute. So I'm really pleased with those. After all of those big sewing projects for the Victorian Festival, I was ready for something a little bit simpler. And around this time was also when we were losing Joann's fabrics, and it closed, I think, within a month or less of when Victorian Festival was. So I decided to have one last hurrah of letting Joann Fabrics and their dwindling selection pick my sewing project, and I wound up making this dress right here, which was largely inspired by a flower girl dress that I wore when I was 5 to my cousin's wedding. And when I saw the fabric in Joann's, I knew instantly that that was what it had to be, and it turned into just such a cute spring dress. I'm really happy with it. After that, it was time to go back to historical sewing, and in a way, I guess like a doll cosplay, but it was actually a cosplay of a dress that I made for dolls. And that was my 1916 ruffled blue cotton dress that I made based off of this doll dress that I made back in 2024. And I loved the doll dress so much that I knew that I wanted one for me. And so this year I was able to make that come to fruition and put together like an exact replica of the doll dress, but for me, and I'm really, really pleased with how that turned out. I hope that I have more occasion to wear it because it's super comfy to wear. It's a little bit heavy because the cotton's a little bit heavy, and it's a very full ruffly skirt, but it is so cute. And just like the 19 teens, especially this mid 19 teens era where things weren't so slim, it's so easy of an era to wear. I highly recommend it if you haven't tried it, because it feels like a much later era than it actually is. Like it feels more like almost 1950s or something instead of 19 teens. So in a way it feels a lot more freeing, I think, because of those fuller skirts, but it's just a fun and very flattering era. So that brings us up to kind of like early June-ish. And the next project that I did was another kind of like super quick one because I made another chemise à la reine. If you remember from last year, 2024, I made a chemise à la reine then, and that was like kind of a purple spooky chemise à la reine. And I took, I think, the exact same pattern. I don't think I made any changes to it at all, if I remember correctly. Maybe I did. Maybe you have to go back and watch those videos, or maybe I have to go back and watch those videos to see, but I don't really think I made any changes to it. And I made another chemise à la reine, but this time in white, which is of course more practical for a chemise à la reine. And I was making it for a summer picnic event where I think the idea was like everyone was meant to wear chemise à la reines. And that was just a lovely, nice, quick, easy project, which was good because the next project that I dove into was my first, only unsuccessful project of the year. It's not over yet. Don't worry, we will be returning to it, but that is my rainbow bustle dress. So I found these rainbow sheets at the thrift store, and I got this turquoise cotton sateen, I think, when I went to Canada, if I'm remembering correctly. I think that's where I picked it up. And I decided to combine them into this fashion plate, which is a rainbow bustle dress. And I started on it, it was going pretty decently. I made the underskirt, I made like the base of the bodice, and then I got to the collar, and by the time I got there, I was starting to get annoyed by the project, and then the collar just was not working. I was not able to make it work with the materials that I had or like the bandwidth that I had at that point. And so I decided that the best thing to do would be to shelve that project for the foreseeable future. It will be coming back. Actually, my plan is to bring that back right after Comic-Con ends so that I can wear it to Victorian Festival this coming year, 2026. So you will be seeing that again very soon, honestly. After a couple of cosplays, you'll be seeing that as like the next historical project up, I'm pretty positive, or the next non-cosplay historical project up, because technically I'm working on a historical cosplay. So don't worry, we will be going back to that project. I still love it. It's still sitting on a dress form in my sewing room. What you can't see in like all of my sewing room videos is that directly behind the camera is a dress form wearing my rainbow bustle dress and with like the pieces pinned onto it so that I know where everything is. So yeah, we'll be going back to that very soon. The other reason that I took a break from it though was I needed to just kind of make some like modern or vintage inspired pieces, especially because for one thing, I thrifted some Winnie the Pooh fabric that was like really cool. I love it. It was 90s curtain panels and I really wanted to work with it. So I was feeling very inspired about the Winnie the Pooh fabric. And I also had a trip to Disneyland coming up where I wanted to make Disney dresses. So I switched over to making kind of more modern slash vintage inspired outfits, and I made my Winnie the Pooh dress, which I love. I can't wait until it's warm enough that I can wear that again. And then I also made an Alice in Wonderland dress with fabric that I got from Michael's, which, you know, was an experience. But I really liked how that came out as well. And both of those were fun to wear to Disney. And then I also was using some of my Joann's Going Out of Business stash, because I got a lot of fabric when Joann's went out of business. Like, I don't know if I even showed you all of the fabric at any point that I got when Joann's went out of business, but it's a lot. And I made myself an orange and black spooky jumper dress because at this point it was August and I was just really, really ready for spooky season to happen, and it wasn't starting yet, and I wanted to bring my own spookiness in. So I made an orange and black jumper dress that I have worn so many times. I could not even begin to tell you. That was probably in my #1 rotation for all of like the fall season. That's how many times I wore that dress. On my return from Disneyland though, it was time to dive into my next really big project of the year, and one that I had kind of been anticipating for years, because I somehow have been sewing and doing historical costuming for 15 years, having never made a robe a la Française. And I'm so glad that I was able to fix that this year and finally make a robe a la Française. I feel like it was so overdue. Although it was maybe a little bit scary and daunting, it was not nearly as scary and daunting as I kind of had built it up in my head. I am so happy with how the outcome is, and I will be making almost certainly another one this coming year. That's how much I enjoyed actually making and wearing it and everything, and knowing that there are other events that I can use them for as well. I'm a Robe a la Française convert. I think you will be seeing maybe one a year for the next little bit, because I've been stockpiling fabrics for Robe a la Française for like a few years now. So I have fabrics and I'm very excited to use them now that I have gotten over the hurdle of actually making one. I just have to remember everything that I did with that one. But yeah, I'm really pleased with how that came out. It was just, it was so pretty. I loved the sparkles of the stomacher. That was just a lucky thrift find. And just wearing it to the event, the 18th Century Global Salon hosted by Costumers of Color, it was also just a beautiful event. And yeah, I had a lot of fun, both making, to a certain degree at least, and especially wearing that Robe a la Française, and I will be making more. What I kind of did in a weird order was, after I finished the Robe a la Française, I also then made an 18th century chemise, because I've been using one that I made in 2010. So I made myself a new chemise, and I have actually gotten already a fair amount of use out of it. I know that I was feeling kind of let down about it at the end of the chemise video, but it is better than my old one, so that's a point in its favor. And I have already worn it multiple times with multiple 18th century outfits, like Katrina. I'll be wearing it with Felicity. I feel like there's something else in there. I've been wearing it with my Tudor stuff as well, in fact, when I've been like trying on all the mock-ups. So yeah, it will be getting a lot of use. I'm glad that I finally made that new chemise. Once that chemise was done, it was kind of time to turn my attention to spooky season sewing, except that it wasn't really spooky season, it was Wicked season. I wanted to wear a dress for the Wicked movie that would be like a Glinda inspired dress, and I had had this sequin fabric sitting in my stash for 2 to 3 years, I think, kind of in anticipation of making a big sparkly dress like this. I had almost made it for last year's Wicked release, but didn't have time. So this year I was very excited to put together a Glinda inspired dress that was also inspired by a fanciful doll dress that I've had my eye on for since I first stumbled across their ads, I think. And I'm really pleased with how that came out. Now I just need more occasions to wear more sequin dresses to. And once that was done, I was very excited to turn my attention to more like wintry sewing, not so much Christmassy, but kind of, because it was Caroline's Redingote, or Caroline's Winter Coat, which is what American Girl call it. And it was a cosplay of a Regency outfit, a Regency Redingote, but from American Girl. And I have loved her Redingote. It's my favorite piece in Caroline's collection. And I have just loved it since I first saw it and was like, that's my favorite color. It's royal blue. And it's a Redingote, it's Regency, it's a wintry outfit for Regency, which I don't have in my wardrobe, and we do Regency events all the time up here, so it's like very functional. I had meant to make it for an event, And then that event only partially happened, so I did not actually go to the event and I did not actually wear it to that event, but I'm sure that I will in the future, and I know that I'm gonna get a lot of use out of it. It's very comfy, it's very cute, and it looks just like Caroline's. After finishing the redingote, I started on that Tudor Jane that I mentioned earlier, and that is my current ongoing project. She is not finished. At this point, she is an overskirt and part of a bodice. That's all I've gotten to so far. I am looking forward to putting the rest of her together and doing all of the intricate details that I'm planning to do, like on the sleeves and on the forepart. So more videos on Tudor Jane will be coming very soon, but if you haven't seen the first start of that, just like everything else, that's linked down below in the description. And in the middle of working on Tudor Jane, I did also do one other project, which was a 1930s dress, another era that I had never done before. And I had made it because I was feeling inspired by Annie, and I wound up wearing it for Annie. And honestly, I got a lot of compliments on that specific dress, so I guess it worked. It's again my favorite color, royal blue, and it's a cute cut. The skirt in particular, I definitely see myself making that pattern again with all of the adjustments, of course, that I made for size. But it's very flattering, it's very cute, it's very 30s, and it wasn't as scary as I thought it was gonna be to wear. It actually looked good. And then I did make one more project this year. You haven't actually seen the video on this project yet. That's going to be next week's video, but I made my mom a skirt for her Christmas present. She already knows about it, so that's why I'm talking about it here. In fact, by the time you are seeing this video, she probably will have already even received it. And it's a skirt that is made out of more of the Winnie the Pooh fabric that I had left over, and it's just a simple elastic waisted skirt. So that video again is coming next week. It's basically the easiest sewing project that you can make for garment sewing. Like, it is the best first time project. So if you are watching this video and you don't yet sew and you are interested in learning how to sew, that project is again coming next week, and I highly recommend watching it because I highly recommend using that as your first project. It's just a really, really nice and chill way to start out on your sewing journey. Speaking of your sewing journey, I would love to hear about your sewing journey. So please let me know down in the comments what you made this year, if there was anything in particular that you're really proud of that you made, or maybe there's a new technique that you tried this year, or maybe you're determined that you're going to start sewing. I want to hear all about it. And if you have other accomplishments that you did this year too, again, could just be going to work every day, getting out of bed, or maybe you adopted a new pet, because that was one of my other accomplishments, of course, was I adopted Cookie this year. Cookie has been a wonderful addition to my family with Maisie and I'm very glad to have him here. I have taken off his collar so that he did not jingle all through this video, because he's been bugging me for a walk, except it's raining, so we're not going to. But yeah, I'm really glad to have added Cookie to the family. So if you've added anyone to your family, let me know. And that, I think, is going to be it for me for this year's year in review. Hopefully you have enjoyed this video. Again, leave me comments down below in the description. I'd love to hear from you. If you like this video, please go ahead and click the thumbs up icon. And if you'd like to see more videos like this from me, or really sewing videos, let's be honest, please go ahead and click subscribe and the little bell icon to be notified every time I post a new video. I do post videos here on YouTube at least once a week, usually with sewing vlogs out on Tuesdays, and sometimes with additional costuming or sewing related content out on Saturdays, but I post every day over on my Instagram, so please go follow me on Instagram. That's at Lady Rebecca Fashions. And if you'd like to help support all of the work that I do on this channel, I do have a link to my Patreon and my Ko-fi down in the description below, or you can send me a super thanks or join my YouTube channel membership right here on YouTube below the video. I'd also like to give a special shout out to my Edwardian level patrons, Jean and Kim. Thank you all so much for joining me today. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Happy sewing and Happy New Year!